Good evening. Today is the 28th day of November 2016, and our continuing series, Explorations in Savitri, with our brother Alok. Namaskar. We are on page 170, the Book of the Traveler of the Worlds, Canto 5, The Godheads of the Little Life.
So, we had stopped with this passage, which basically our thoughts, our feelings, our senses, even the very form, this dust, this matter, everything seeks for the touch of the divine and its transmutation. And this is the biggest challenge, and this is what opens the doors to Sri Aurobindo's yoga. Unlike traditional yoga, where we discard these things as either an obstacle or a vanity of vanities or an illusion. So Sri Aurobindo confirms this aspiration for terrestrial perfection. He does not exclude it, he does not deny it, but he shows us the way towards it. This urge, and we had read those wonderful lines, each part in us desires its absolute. Our very senses blindly seek for bliss. Shapes, senses, everywhere. There is a need for that divine touch. And this is the reason why we, even when we are inwardly awake, when we become aware of the soul within and the divine presence within, our nature still offers a resistance. Actually, this resistance can be seen as a resistance. On the other hand, it's like a seeking inbuilt within it, and it says, you have it, how about us? I give, there's so many examples. One of them is, I've got friendly with one of the dogs who moves around the ashram. So when I'm entering the dispensary, he stops my way. Actually, he doesn't block my way. He says, how about me? I also want to come with you. And he has a right to it. Well, why not? After all, so all these parts, like children, they cry for attention. They say, why not me? Yeah. So that's what Sri Aurobindo is trying to show us, that all these parts desire for their absolute, their perfection, their culmination, their grand possibility. And that is why in this yoga, the soul is not allowed to escape into the ineffable, abandoning this. That's why the effort is so long, the process so difficult, so exacting, so thorough, which can tax anyone. Sri Aurobindo and the mother will not allow us just to withdraw inside and have that beautiful psychic experience and stay with it. They want nature also to change. And that's why nature pulls the spirit down even into its darkened layers. So beautifully, interestingly conjured here in these lines, our error crucifies reality. It wants to see God in the body. Are you divine? Are you divine? Is the very body divine? And we know how that famous story where one of the child used to pinch the mother's toes till it became black and blue. While mother would be giving talk in the playground, he would pinch the toe. And people would get very annoyed, and she would just tell them, it is between me and the child. And the child is still there. I won't name, of course, grown up. So that child, when mother was asked, he said, that child wants to test whether I am divine or not. So the only way he can test me is by seeing the body, what its reactions are. Of course, the body will pain, but it must arrive at a stage when it doesn't pain, it transmutes all pain into bliss. That's what Sri Aurobindo was trying when he, has the fracture.
Yes.
That he was trying to transmute even the most severe kind of physical pain into bliss. So that's where...
And he did it.
And he did it. So our error crucifies reality. It fixes it. Here crucifixion, it fixes it right onto dense matter where it doesn't belong. It's not its rightful place. The divine's place is not rightfully here in this dungeon, and yet it is fixed there. And the divine comes. Why he comes? To force its birth and divine body here, compelling, incarnate in a human form, and breathing in limbs that one can touch and clasp, its knowledge to rescue an ancient ignorance. So that's why ignorance throws its snare around the divine, ties him. There are so many interesting stories. One of them is, Krishna's story. It's very interesting that there is a forecast, prophecy, that the eighth son of Devaki will kill Kansa. Now, logically, Kansa should have just killed Devaki. That was the end of the matter. It's no Devaki, no eighth child. But it doesn't do that. It is as if something in him is waiting. He would kill the children, but not the origin. As if he is waiting that when really there will be a deliverance of my soul. That's how the secret story is, that Kansa was once, the gatekeeper of the divine. And he fell down because of the ego. And so the divine had to come for his rescue. So he is also waiting. Let him come. But I am not going to leave him just like this. I am going to test him to the limits. So as a child I am going to kill him. Let me see. If he is the divine, nothing will happen to him. So it compels the incarnate in a human form. So this denial, in a certain sense, compels the divine to come to earth. Its savior light, the inconscient universe. And that's why Sri Aurobindo makes that wonderful aphorism, Christ from his cross humanized Europe.
Yes.
So, what kind of, we human beings so allowed this to happen. But the moment this happens, a sense of shock goes into the very dust. This earth suddenly, what has happened? What has happened? And it awakens something in earth like a response. It feels paradoxically, having crucified, that there is something wrong about it, something amiss. This shouldn't have happened. So Christ from his cross wins the victory. So this is how the incarnate divine works. See, people who were not convinced about Sri Aurobindo's divinity suddenly became convinced. There are examples of that when Sri Aurobindo leaves the physical body. You don't have to wait till then. And the mother gave a message. The lack of receptivity of earth and men was responsible. He was not compelled to leave the body. But look at it, when Sri Aurobindo leaves the body, there is a stir in creation. And the supramental light descends. And then people, this is amazing. 111 hours, bathed in supramental light, no decay.
These next lines.
Yes. So what is the process for this change? That's why the same thing which happens through the avatar happens in us in a different way, because he opens the channel for the descent. His descent means the descent of a new consciousness upon earth and in matter. And the very fact that he assumes a human body means now that plane of consciousness, that light which he has embodied, can come down and establish in man. So Sri Aurobindo, these wonderful lines which again connect with the 24th November. And when that greater self comes sea-like down, not in trickles, not even in thin streams, but sea-like, drowning us, filling us, surrounding us, to fill this image of our transience, all shall be captured by delight, transformed. This is, of course, a real experience. I am sure many have it. The descent of the higher consciousness, which takes the form of waves of delight. Sri Aurobindo notes it in the records of yoga. Delight coming down right up to the very physical cells. He uses the word. The confluence of Ananda and matter. Delight. In waves of undreamed ecstasy shall roll our mind and life and sense and laugh in a light other than this hard, limited human day. And not just the body, not just the mind and life and senses. The body's tissues thrill, apotheosized, heightened to its ultimate possibility, lifted to its pinnacle, the body's cells and tissues. Its cells sustain bright metamorphosis. This is the process of transformation. That the descents of the higher and higher levels of consciousness. They come, they touch and go, then slowly they become more and more permanent, more and more frequent, and then the very cells start undergoing a bright metamorphosis. They begin to become responsive to the light. Right now they are not. And of course in general they are not. But as we open more and more, the higher consciousness starts the work of transformation. And then what happens? This little being of time, this shadow soul, this living dwarf figurehead of darkened spirit, out of its traffic in petty dreams shall rise. Traffic in petty dreams, whether you call it the waking dream or the dream when comes during sleep, pettiness all around. Then we shall rise out of it. He is speaking in the kingdoms and godheads of the little I, meaning thereby even this layer has to get transformed and will get transformed. It's the most difficult part. Sri Aurobindo says so many times in letters, the most crucial battle. At one place he says, my yoga hinges upon this movement where the lower vital gets transformed. It's the most difficult part. It just resists and resists, and the divine would not give up till it changes. It's the seat of all the troubles. Its shape of person and its ego face, divested of this mortal travesty, like a clay trawl kneaded into a god. What an interesting word Sri Aurobindo has used. Yes. Like a clay trawl kneaded into a god. Trawl is generally used in a negative sense.
Very negative.
Very negative sense. Yes. The journalist nowadays, you're trolling him. Because it's like literally nagging. Sharp criticism. Things like that, are all trolls. So here matter will be trawled till it is kneaded into a god. So we should not worry if the divine sometimes, imagine we are trawled by the divine so that we get transformed into a god.
New made
in the image of the eternal guest, it shall be caught to the breast of a white force and flaming with the paradisal touch in a rose fire of sweet spiritual grace, in the red passion of its infinite change, quiver, awake, and shudder with ecstasy. So the very body, the cells, the tissues, the nerves, the senses, all of them will be caught up in the divine embrace, the white force, the white power. So it's not just that we will feel something inside, the divine presence within. The very cells must feel the mother's touch.
Many have had this experience in mother's presence.
Yes. Even now, this is an experience which, this is how things change. So the very passions you see change. Rose fire of sweet spiritual grace in the red passion of its infinite change. Passions turning towards the divine. They undergo a change. As if reversing a deformation spell, released from the black magic of the night, renouncing servitude to the dim abyss, it shall learn at last who lived within unseen. See, this deformation spell, there are two stories from the Indian mythology which come to my mind. One is an interesting story when Krishna lands up in the court of Kansa, where he will be killed. So there is a very a woman who is very, very ugly and bent, and she wants to meet him, she loves him, but would not meet him because she doesn't look good. Everybody mocks at her. So Krishna spots her around there, and she calls her. Her name is Kubja because she is bent all over. And then he says, "Oh, Sundari, you are so beautiful." And suddenly she is transformed into a beautiful maiden. Now, this is not a story of a crude miracle. So, it's a symbolic story. Deformation spell. And the other is a story which people somehow see the other side and not see the one side and not the other. And the story in the Ramayana where Ahilya, she is a woman who is moving on the path towards the divine, and she is cursed to become a stone. So people see only this side of the story, that, very bad of the man. Of course it's very bad that he cursed her. It doesn't require any deep, profound philosophy. He was stupid in a moment of anger to have cursed her. Leave aside the symbolic part. There is no justification for it. But they miss the other side of the story, that when Rama comes, his feet touches her and she is transformed into a divine being and ascends to the heaven. So, it's again a story that there is a spell of deformation, and by the touch of the divine grace, we are transformed. And what does the divine do? He simply tells us one thing, which Mother says in Words of the Mother, Volume 2, Collected Works, Volume 2, very beautifully. She says, how nice if we can tell others, instead of looking at their defects, etc. That's implicit. Arise, O resplendent being, thou who art beautiful and free of blemishes. But instead we do the opposite movement. I'm reminded of a very interesting story of a doctor who had very good results in his practice, and someone asked this doctor, we also do the same thing, use the same medicines. How is it that your patients respond better? We don't see that you do much. So he said, I don't know, but I just believe that everybody is a mask of Sachidananda. So when I stand before a patient, I just say this, oh Sachidananda, why are you wearing this deformed mask? Why have you come dressed like a sick person? And it works. It's a magic. So, sometimes a good word, a kind deed, of course it cannot break the spell, but it can open us to a light which can break the spell. Simply mother's child. That itself can, give an opening which can break the spell. Otherwise, these forces keep us, telling us that we are just small, we are weak, this is a spell. It's literally like a, black mass, incantation. In Sri Aurobindo Upanishad, he reminds us, he says, what is falsehood and error? What is ignorance? He says, ignorance is to say I am weak. Ignorance is to say I am limited. And this spell comes from all around. Again, another story of Sri Ramakrishna, where a, baby lion, the mother lion dies soon after delivering the baby, and this baby lion grows up with a flock of sheep and learns to bleat and eat grass. Till one day, lion jumps upon this flock and everybody is running. And this little lion also starts running. And the big lion comes and says, why are you running? He says, for God's sake, please save me. And he bleats. He bleats because that's what it knows. He says, why are you bleating? He says, what do you mean? I am a sheep and I need to bleat. And I am full of fear from you. It's natural for a sheep. Now please, I am a child, at least, don't eat me up. So lion accosts that baby lion and takes him to a nearby clear stream and says, look inside. So he looks. And then he looks up, then looks into the stream, looks up, looks at his own image, looks at the lion. He says, I am the same. There is no difference. And then Vivekananda added his own version to the story. In the end, he says, so the big lion tells the small one, now you too feel strong and free and roar. Don't bleed. So it's a deformation spell all around. You are a sheep, you are a goat, you are a sinner, you are a fallen being.
You're weak.
Yeah, weak. It drummed into our very bones. So it's a deformation spell, lower vital. Oh, puny creature. But divine undoes that. So what happens after that? Renouncing servitude to the dim abyss. Here he has used the word black magic of the night. This is the magic we don't even realize. And there is a white magic which undoes it. It shall learn at last who lived within unseen. So you discover who you truly are. You are not this creature struggling and suffering. So it shall learn. And seized with marvel in the adoring heart, to the enthroned child Godhead kneel aware, trembling with beauty and delight and love. So one day this very creature who is tied up to the most lowest outpost of ignorance will turn within and discover the child God. What a wonderful word. Is the first Godhead, the psychic being in man. So it shall discover, and this whole lower nature will lean before it, pay obeisance, and undergo a transmuting change. But there is a condition before that. But first, the spirit's ascent we must achieve. So Sri Aurobindo came to bring this delight and love upon earth. Sri Aurobindo says that in one of the letters. It is our work to bring love and delight to earth. But before we can achieve it, we have seen it in our experience that truth must be established as a base.
But first, high truth must set her feet on earth.
So that's why the supramental. The hardness, the tapasya, the cold, the aloof. We want to rush towards delight. And every time we touch delight, we lose our head, or lose our heart, or lose our senses. So first, high truth must set its feet on earth. So that's the ascent. But first, the spirit's ascent we must achieve before the descent. Out of the chasm from which our nature rose, the soul must soar sovereign above the form and climb to summits beyond mind's half sleep. Our hearts we must inform with heavenly strength, surprise the animal with the occult God. This occult God is the psychic. Surprise the animal.
Occult here, hidden.
Hidden
God.
Hidden God who must step out. And see, that's the symbol. All these gods in Indian mythology have animals as their vahanas. At least this is how I have understood. Always that why all these gods ride on animals, and some of them on strange animals. Why can't they choose something better? It's a symbol. It's a symbol of the animal nature within us being mastered by the godlike elements within us. And not the other way around. Not that the godlike element is suppressed, submerged by the animal within us. It should be the other way around. So gods riding animals. So surprise the animal with a hidden God. Oh, he's there. I suppose that's why this new movie which has come, Jungle Book. Interesting movie that, he grows up among all the animals, this boy. What is his name? It's nice. Mowgli. And yet he is, he learns, he becomes intimate with all the animals. And yet he becomes their king. He's a little boy, so weak in strength. And there are, animals who are against him, but many who align with him. And eventually he becomes their leader. So this is a very interesting story which somebody very symbolically, probably unwittingly, in a state of high imagination, which is close to inspiration, has brought out this truth in a very simple way. So this must be first done, that psychic must step out, the soul must be freed from the clutch of ignorance. It's a paradox. If you want to conquer death, you must first be free of the fear of death. It cannot be done like I am afraid of death, therefore I must conquer it. It doesn't work. Then kindling the gold tongue of sacrifice, calling the powers of a bright hemisphere, we shall shed the discredit of our mortal state. So when we have discovered the psychic being, then the true sacrifice starts, yajna, the purification process. And Aurobindo speaks of it as the gold tongue of sacrifice. In a fire there is the apex, and it must soar towards the very highest heights.
Like a tongue.
Tongue, gold tongue of sacrifice. And that's how the purification goes on, and then we discredit, shed our mortal state. Make the abysm a road for heaven's descent. So even in the very body, we must do this inner sacrifice, this inner yajna, not escaping from it. So in the chasm, it's the image of somebody in the abyss calling down the divine while he's there, and the divine comes to the rescue. So that's what we are reading in this whole passage, that why we are bound to this lower vital state, much though we would like to be free. Because this too has to change. And the same thought is there in one of the earlier passages, that, why the soul has to go down into the darkened state. And Aurobindo says, it's in the very beginning, I think page 34 or 35, where he speaks of even his godlike strength to rise must fall.
Yes.
This too the supreme diplomat can use. He makes our fall a means to greater rise.
Right.
For hidden unseen by us in the gusty and tumultuous fields of nature, he comes. He comes unseen into our darkened parts.
Darker parts
And there, curtained by the darkness, does his work.
Yes. An all-knowing guest and guide, till we too feel.
Till they too feel.
Till they too feel.
Feel the change.
Yes.
And then he says, why? Because otherwise the soul would escape and this creation collapse.
Yeah.
So you see, it's so beautiful and simple. He is the bondage and he is the freedom. But we have to aspire. It's not, we can misuse this aphorism. So Aurobindo puts it very beautifully in a set of aphorisms. He says, if God keeps me in hell, why should I struggle? This one aphorism. It's a series of two aphorisms. Why should I struggle? Why not I accept it with surrender? Then he says, if God keeps me in hell with one hand and lifts me towards heaven with the other, still I must aspire to move towards the heavenly state. So we are in that state where with one hand we are in the darkened state and the another hand is lifting us towards heaven. And our lives are caught between the two, and we must aspire to reach there. And when the aspiration is strong, and this place is ready, then suddenly this other hand is lifted up. The burden of night is taken away, and all becomes one. This is the process. Here he has given it in different context. Make the abysm a road for heaven's descent. Acquaint our depths with the supernal ray, and cleave the darkness with the mystic fire. So here again, so fire burns in the darkness because it has to abolish the darkness. And here again we have the famous Ramayana story. Sita is world mother. She could have easily vanquished Ravana. She didn't need even Rama and Lakshmana. This is how it is explained in the Adhyatma Ramayana, which is a spiritual aspect of Ramayana. But this is the reason why she becomes weak, helpless, and goes all the way to Lanka. The reason is that by her going there is a chance for Ravana to change. So she first tries to change them by her very presence. And some of the Rakshasas begin to change because they feel that she is not any ordinary woman. She is really a goddess. But most of them do not. Then Rama comes, another chance to change. Why? Because she is there. So within us too, that divine energy conceals itself in the very base in matter. That's how it is described, that this fire has three forms. One is it burns on the apex of the world. There is a fire at the apex of the world, the supramental fire. Then another where it enters into the heart of creation and builds the forms, Jata Vedas. And the third where it enters into matter itself and becomes the householder of matter, Rahaspati.
Powerful word, cleave the
Cleaves
darkness.
the darkness. So why does that divine energy go into the very base of matter? Because by its presence it draws that its own self from above, and as it comes, eventually it will touch base. And that's what is meant by the serpent biting its tail. That's 24th November, we had forgotten to mention this, that there was a curtain hanging in the backdrop where there were three Chinese dragons. And it was said that when these three Chinese dragons represented the victory over matter or the change of matter. And the mother gives in the same story that it is also depicted as a serpent biting its own tail. When the two ends come together. So that's why the psychic being is made to enter into clay. It's not a meaningless bondage. There is a great plan behind it, so that the greater self can come down to rescue this divine child. So we have to stay in the body and aspire for the change. And our consciousness has to be freed.
We have a little break here, because after this break, Aswapati continues his journey.
So we can read this much.
Yes,
We
can read
10
it.
minutes, because now this is over. Aurobindo has given us the greater plan, the picture, what the lower vital world is, the forces, the energies, the beings, the godheads, its role, tools of the unknown who use us as their tools, and yet why it is allowed in the grand scheme of things. And this too will change. There is a great hope and assurance, and it will change by the divine touch as it comes down. Whenever people complained about the lower vital difficulties, now also in the latest issue of the bulletin, there is a whole correspondence, and there is this man wanting to get freed from sexual difficulties. And he is trying hard and he gets free and again gets into the clutches. This long correspondence. And Aurobindo says, finally it goes only when the higher consciousness comes down and occupies the very body. He makes it very clear. Only when that happens. So he would say, call for that more and more. Prepare yourself for that. And when it descends and comes, it begins to bring peace and wideness into these parts. If you do it with the mind, it doesn't work. Mental tapasya can only cap it, and when it bursts like sears, it can really lead to chaotic reactions. So call for the descent of the higher consciousness, give yourself to it, and as it comes down, it will change the lower vital parts, release from them the occult god, transmute our passions into a means for building a road to heaven, and reverse the deformation spell. So Ashwapati has seen all this, and we are so grateful that Aurobindo has revealed all this truth to us. Otherwise, we would have been struggling always, either giving up or wondering it's a nightmare or an illusion. And now he moves further, adventuring once more in the natal mist, the early life forms. So the natal mist, out of matter, lower vital, this life has emerged. Across the dangerous haze, the pregnant stir, he through the astral chaos shore away mid the grave faces of its demon gods. So demon gods, this is the ancient tantric way of addressing them. One is that they are demons, but other is they were originally godheads who have become dark and deities. What is called in the Vedas as Purvadeva. In the original Vedas, there are no asuras in that sense. Asuras represent the other side of the one consciousness. Later on, they plunge into darkness and become these. So, the demon god. Because they are deep inside. They too carry in themselves the touch of the Godhead, an aspect of the divine. They have to be transmuted into that. But now Ashwapati sees them in their as they are. And look at this image, questioned by whispers of its flickering ghosts. They come and go, besieged by sorceries of its fluent force. They are appearing and vanishing. Ghosts. Was it here? No, it's gone. Flickering ghost in that natal mist. As one who walks unguided through strange fields, tending he knows not where nor with what hope. Tending he knows not where nor with what hope, he trod a soil that failed beneath his feet and journeyed in stone strength to a fugitive end. This is such a remarkable, play of words. Normally, you journey on stone and your heart is the soft place. Here, he is trodding upon a soil which is failing beneath its feet. It's a boggy state. Any time it can suck him below. So that is it's not firm, it's not terra firma. And what is his state? Stone strength. Otherwise, your heart will fail when you are caught in this world. You have to be strong. In the lower vital, it's so important to be strong. When Aurobindo was asked what we should bring in this part so that we don't succumb to its all kinds of forces, Aurobindo mentioned three things: peace, wideness, and strength. He said, bring in peace, wideness, and strength in the lower vital parts. So that's what saves it.
To a fugitive end.
To a fugitive end, because that's the experience there. There is no road where you are going. It's like when you are going through a mist. Nothing is visible. You don't even know the next step in front. His trail behind him was a vanishing line. You can't even look back and see where I have come from, so that you can at least trace your steps. His trail behind him was a vanishing line of glimmering points in a vague immensity. A bodiless murmur travelled at his side, in the wounded gloom complaining against light. This is a very important point. The worst that can happen with the lower vital realm, when we are caught in it, hopefully none should be caught, is not about the forces of nature. They are there. But the worst is complaint against light. And the mother would repeatedly say, one place she tells Huta that mischief creators, the little mischief, these beings are full of mischief. But she says, every time you complain and every time you grudge, you bring into play the adverse forces. They are just drawn because they are formed of this. That's why we see in, all the ghosts are always complaining because of something that has happened. They are either crying or sobbing. God knows how they cry. I don't think it is always. It looks very funny when ghosts cry. Why are they crying, Baba? Now you don't have the problem. You can do things, fly in air, etc. But anyways, that's the joke part of it. They are poor fellows and they need to be freed from their state. If we ever encounter one, we should tell them, please go back to your, I am telling you, there was a real experience. When I occupied Desiree home, people told me there are a lot of ghosts here. They used to be there. So I said, don't worry, I'll, handle. So one day I had a series of 3 dreams and it started with one of them who started coming close. And all the 3 I had to call in the mother and they went away. They went away. So I said, where are these fellows coming from? So one day I then prayed. After these 3 successive experiences, I went and prayed. I said, see, first I prayed to mother. I said, mother, these beings, they really need peace. It's so sad that, they are running here and there looking for somebody, something. Please give them peace and calm. And then I told them also, see, we all have come here. We don't mean anything bad. We are a good intention people. We have nothing against you guys, but I must tell you, Divine Mother is here, so don't mess is one thing. Second, you have hope, so please go and pray to her. I'm sure she will release you from that state. Believe me, from that day, everything stopped. It is amazing, and it's so interesting. They are actually suffering, so we should do something for them. No, we are human beings supposed to pray for everyone. Why not also for ghosts? They are also objects of pity, not fear. So murmur, they murmur into us, and we complain. People, how they complain murmuring, they don't say openly, they would murmur. Oh, this is very dangerous. Mother used to say this, especially against light and against the divine. There are people who say this. I can't use those words about mother, about ashram. No. Not to be done. Our burden is big enough. Don't add to it by murmuring and complaining against the light. As if mother doesn't know what she is doing, what she has done. There are people who went and complained to mother. And they would complain about silly things, not about big things. Mother so-and-so misbehaved with me, please scold him. Aurobindo had to write a letter. Do you think we are a tribunal of justice who are here to sort out the problems of sadhaks against each other? If we were to do that, there would be no end. They are not a tribunal of justice, and people are doing this, complaining one against another, one about another. What they must be bearing, God only knows. Obviously, sure enough, it's only delight that could sustain them. So complain against the light. But this is the state where they complain. A huge obstruction, its immobile heart. Wow. Heart, it doesn't move, doesn't respond to the light. The watching opacity multiplied as he moved. They don't give in easily. So you have to just keep pressing and keep moving. Don't stay on, don't get frightened, don't get benumbed by the extent of the difficulty. They will keep multiplying, you keep moving, and they will vanish. Its hostile mass of dead and staring eyes. Of course, it's very interesting. Of course, they are factual things which are dead. From the subconscious, they spring up and they take hold of the lower vital. You feel a habit is gone, it comes. You feel, I am fine, free from anger, and says, okay, fine. The ghost returns. So they are the ghosts, the real ghosts, whom we keep in our, shelter in our bodies and minds. The darkness glimmered like a dying torch. Around him an extinguished phantom glow, peopled with shadowy and misleading shapes. That is also we have been told how in the lower vital world there are very deceptive energies. They can assume all kinds of forms. The vague, inconscience, dark and measureless cave. That's why Mother says never try to fathom the inconscient. Trying to fight with it. Oh, I will also fight battle with the night. It will suck you inside because it is also infinite. Because it is the shadow of the infinite. So repeatedly, don't try to fight with darkness this way. The way to extinguish is by bringing in the light. If you can do it, do it. If you can bring the light, it will automatically vanish. But while being in darkness, you fight with darkness, it will only cover you with greater and greater darkness. So this is the take-home point. The vague, inconscience, dark and measureless cave. His only sunlight was his spirit's flame. That must remain awake and always bright and light.
And that is the end of Canto 5.
Yes. So we have stopped at a very nice place. And we'll continue on 12th December, hopefully.